Have you ever walked away from a situation and later wondered why you trusted someone who clearly didn't deserve it? Why you ignored the signs, explained away the discomfort, and still chose to believe? This isn't just about other people. This is about something deeper. Because when you keep asking yourself why you keep trusting the wrong people, you're not just questioning them, you're questioning yourself. And that can feel heavy, confusing, even frustrating. Do you ever wonder why this keeps happening to you? Why your heart wants to believe, even when your mind already knows? Today, we're going to break that pattern. Not with blame, but with clarity. Not with fear, but with emotional healing and self-respect. You meet someone and something about them feels right, not because of what they consistently show, but because of what you imagine they could become. You notice small gestures, kindness, attention, moments that feel meaningful, and your mind fills in the gaps. You start believing that with time, patience, or understanding, they'll grow into the version you see in your head. And slowly, without realizing, you stop evaluating reality. You begin investing in potential. The problem is, potential is not a promise. It's not a guarantee of change, and it doesn't reflect present character. When actions don't align with expectations, you adjust your expectations instead of questioning their behavior. That's where the cycle begins. The shift comes when you pause and ask yourself a simple question. What are they consistently showing me? Not occasionally, because consistency reveals truth. Emotional healing begins when you stop building connections on imagined futures and start grounding them in present actions. When you allow yourself to see clearly, without filtering or hoping, you begin to protect your energy instead of losing it in possibilities that may never become real. Sometimes the connection feels strangely familiar. Even when something feels off, you don't walk away. You stay, you adapt, you tolerate. And it's not always because the situation is good. It's because it feels known. Your mind recognizes the emotional pattern, even if it's uncomfortable. Maybe inconsistency, distance, or unpredictability has shown up in your past before, and now your system treats it like something it already understands. That familiarity can create a false sense of comfort. You don't question it as strongly because it doesn't feel completely new. But familiar doesn't mean safe. It just means repeated. The challenge is that your emotional system often prefers what it knows over what is actually healthy. So you stay in patterns that quietly drain you simply because they don't feel unfamiliar. The shift begins when you stop asking, does this feel normal? And start asking, does this feel peaceful? Because peace may feel unfamiliar at first, especially if you're used to emotional highs and lows. But peace is what sustains you. Healing happens when you begin choosing calm over chaos, even when calm feels unfamiliar to you. There's a quiet pressure you place on yourself to prove your value. You give more time, more patience, more understanding, believing that if you show enough effort, things will eventually balance out. You find yourself explaining your intentions, justifying your actions, and adjusting your behavior to make things work. It feels like you're being responsible, like you're doing the right thing. But underneath that effort is a deeper belief that care has to be earned, that respect comes after you've proven yourself. The truth is, the right people don't require you to overextend just to be treated with basic decency. When you keep trying to earn what should already be present, you slowly disconnect from your own worth. You begin to measure yourself through their response instead of your own values. The shift begins when you stop asking, what more can I do? And start asking, what am I tolerating? Because the moment you recognize that your effort is one-sided, you gain clarity. Emotional healing starts when you allow yourself to step back from overgiving and return to a place where your presence is enough without constant proof. Most patterns don't begin with something obvious. They start small, almost unnoticeable. A missed commitment, a vague explanation, a moment where something doesn't quite feel right. You catch it, but you don't stay with it. Instead, you soften it. You tell yourself you might be overthinking, or that it's not a big deal. You choose to give the benefit of the doubt, again and again, until those small moments begin to form a pattern. The difficulty is not that the signs aren't there. It's that you've trained yourself to override them. Your awareness speaks early, but your desire to maintain the connection speaks louder. Over time, this creates a disconnect between what you feel and what you allow. The shift begins when you stop negotiating with those early signals. Instead of dismissing them, you observe them. You don't react immediately, but you also don't ignore. You let the pattern reveal itself without interference. Emotional healing grows when you learn to respect your initial awareness, because it often sees clearly before your emotions have fully caught up. There are moments when staying feels easier than leaving, even when something inside you knows it isn't right. The silence that follows distance, the empty space after stepping away, it can feel heavier than the discomfort you've been tolerating. So you convince yourself to hold on a little longer, to adjust, to wait for things to improve. Not because the situation is healthy, but because it feels like something is better than nothing. That belief slowly keeps you in places that drain you. The deeper truth is that fear of being alone can make you accept what you would otherwise question. It can make you overlook patterns, minimize your needs, and stay connected to something that no longer supports your well-being. The shift begins when you start seeing solitude not as loss, but as space. Space to think clearly, to reconnect with yourself, to rebuild a sense of calm that doesn't depend on anyone else. Emotional healing grows when you begin to understand that peace on your own is more stable than connection built on uncertainty. There's also a tendency to measure others through your own standards. You think in terms of how you would act, how you would respond, how you would treat someone in the same situation. So when you give honesty, patience, or effort, you expect that same level in return. When it doesn't come back the way you imagined, it creates confusion. You question whether you did something wrong, or whether you need to try differently. But the reality is that people operate from their own values, their own priorities, and their own level of awareness. Your intentions don't automatically shape their behavior. The shift begins when you separate your standards from theirs. Instead of assuming alignment, you begin to observe differences more clearly. You allow people to show who they are without filtering it through your expectations. Emotional healing deepens when you stop trying to match others to your mindset and instead choose connections that already reflect the respect and clarity you naturally bring. When boundaries are unclear, your energy slowly becomes available to anyone who reaches for it. You may not notice it at first. It begins with small compromises, agreeing to things you're unsure about, staying silent when something doesn't feel right, allowing behavior that you would normally question. You tell yourself you're being understanding, patient, or flexible. But over time, those small allowances create a pattern where your limits are no longer visible. People respond to what is permitted, not what is felt. So when you don't express your boundaries, others naturally continue within that space. The discomfort builds quietly, and eventually you feel drained without fully understanding why. The shift begins when you start defining your limits with clarity, not harshness. You don't need to explain excessively or justify your decisions. You simply recognize what aligns with your values and what doesn't. Emotional healing grows when your actions begin to reflect your self-respect, not your fear of disappointing others. At the center of all of this is your relationship with yourself. You may find it easier to trust others, to give them the benefit of the doubt, to assume positive intent. But when it comes to your own instincts, there is hesitation. You second-guess what you feel, you look for reassurance, you wait for external confirmation before making a decision. That delay weakens your confidence over time. You begin to rely more on others' reactions than your own awareness. The deeper insight is that self-trust isn't something you suddenly have. It's something you build through consistent choices. Every time you listen to your inner sense, even in small ways, you strengthen that connection. The shift begins when you stop dismissing your initial reactions and start respecting them. You don't have to act impulsively, but you do need to acknowledge what you feel without immediately overriding it. Emotional healing takes shape when your inner voice becomes steady enough to guide you without constant validation. So when you ask yourself, why you keep trusting the wrong people, remember, this isn't about blaming yourself. It's about understanding your patterns and gently changing them. You are not broken. You are learning. And every step toward awareness is a step toward inner peace. Share your thoughts below. How are you healing today?